Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Everything Medicare Podcast, and this is episode 50. This is a huge milestone. I never thought when I first started doing this that we would even get to 50 episodes, to be completely honest with you. And so I have no one else to thank for the support than you. You who listen every single day, every person that's hearing this, wherever you are and however you may be listening, I can't tell you enough how grateful and appreciative that I am of you joining me today. And for those of you who've been joining me since the very beginning, thank you very much. This is the Everything Medicare Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Brindle, where every single week I bring you another podcast and another episode. Actually, most weeks it's two podcasts where we talk about your Medicare, your Medicaid, your Social Security, and everything that has to do with that golden age called retirement. And I'm bringing you this episode when I'm actually a little bit low on spirits. And so I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with you because the topic I'm about to share and discuss is something that kind of hits close to home for me. I'm going to start this podcast off with a story. So this is something that happened to me today, okay? Now, this is something that, granted, can happen to anyone in any situation. And things like this have happened to me multiple times over my career. And they'll happen to any single person that works in the insurance industry, and it will happen to a lot of people that are on Medicare. This morning, I wake up, and the first thing that I do with my day is I check my email. I go and check my email. I notice that I have received a notification of a client of mine has canceled her policy with a Medicare Advantage plan carrier here in Utah. Now, that happens from time to time. You know, it's not everyone is going to stick with us. Let me put it that way. Now, granted, I'd say 99% of every person that ever gets a policy through us ends up sticking with us. But every now and then, there's that 1% to where, you know, they end up leaving us for some reason or another, you know. So I didn't think too much of it until I saw the name of the person. I'm not going to give you the name, but to put it into perspective, it was the name of a client of mine who's been one of my best clients over the years. She's someone that has been, you know, just wonderful to work with. I work with every single member of her family, her husband, her sister, her cousin, her son, who happens to be on Medicare disability. And we've just had a great relationship over the years, and we've worked together since 2014 on her plans and on her Medicare. So it took me as a little bit of a shock. I'm going somewhere with the story. Basically, what happened was there was a mistake that happened with her Medicare. So let me put this into perspective. She started her most current plan, the one she's been on now. She's been on a couple different plans with us over the years, but due to changes in the market, we've had to change her plan. So she's been on this current plan since January 1st of 2017. So I noticed that the cancellation was not just for recently or for the following month or anything like that. The cancellation was showing that it was backdating all the way back to 2017 when her policy started in the first place, meaning that the insurance company was trying to claim that she was being canceled since her plan started. So I made some phone calls. What I found out through my connections with this insurance company were fairly simple, to be honest with you. The type of policy she had, I don't want to bore you too much with the story, but I got to put some things into perspective for you to understand completely what I'm trying to say. The type of policy she had was a Medicare Advantage plan. We've talked a lot about them over the years on this podcast. So the Medicare Advantage plan she had was canceling. Point blank, in order for a Medicare Advantage plan to work, a person needs their Medicare Part A and B. What the insurance company was claiming was Medicare had come back, sent them notification that this person has not had Medicare Parts A and B for years. Now, this is very strange. Okay, this is something that I have never encountered, and I've encountered close to everything in this industry. So in layman's terms, what they were claiming was Medicare came back, and after 3 years of federally funding this insurance company to pay this person's claims and everything working perfectly, they were trying to say that for the last 3 years she didn't have Medicare and they goofed. That just doesn't happen. Let me put that out there. Normally when someone doesn't have their Medicare Part B, it's because they forgot to pay the premium on it. The $135.50 per month. They usually forgot to pay the premium on it, and when that happens, it's canceled immediately. There has never been a situation where someone had A and B, and then it took them years to figure out they weren't supposed to have A and B. Now, I call my client, and I talk with her. And I tell her the situation. She has no idea what I'm talking about. Now, I talk with her about the first place my mind goes is, did you pay your Part B premium? She said, yes, I did. She even showed me proof that she paid it within the last 30 days on her most recent one. She paid for the whole year up front with her Medicare Advantage premium. So the only way for us to find out exactly what was going on is for her to call Medicare. Now, me as someone's agent, I can do all kinds of things with the insurance company, but I can't get a hold of Medicare directly. They won't talk to me. That's just a limitation on my boundaries. So she calls Medicare. Come to find out, what happened was someone hit a wrong button. Someone hit a wrong key that sent out information automatically to the insurance company, stating that this person didn't have their parts A and B for many, many years. Think about this. A glitch in their system. Someone hitting a wrong button. Someone hitting a wrong key. That's a big mistake to make, folks. If I had not seen this, what would have happened to this lovely lady of mine who happens to be my client is, for one, her policy would have canceled. I came to find out she has a surgery planned in a couple of weeks. They didn't notify her. They probably would have through mail, but guess what? They call it snail mail for a reason. And a lot of damage can be done in a couple weeks of someone being canceled when they weren't supposed to be. Since they backdated this cancellation back to 2017, the insurance company was in the process of trying to go back and fight and take back the money they've paid on every single claim she's had for 3 years. This was going to be a mess, a nightmare. And guess what? This wasn't her fault. She did everything right. This wasn't my fault as her agent, had nothing to do with me. It was a mistake that Medicare made directly. It was nobody's fault except for some faceless, nameless person that hit the wrong button at Medicare. And chances are we'll never know why or how this happened. But we know that it happened. The point I'm trying to make, folks, is sometimes, no matter how well you prepare, no matter what you do, there can be issues, especially in the Medicare world, that come upon you that have nothing to do with you and that are completely out of your control. Granted, I've seen things like this happen before, but never anything quite like this. So what's a person to do? One thing I found out in particularly through making some phone calls and some connections that I have is that this situation happens to 1 out of every 10 to 20,000 people. That's how rare it is. And it happened to be her. Now this lady that I'm talking about is incredibly sharp. She's incredibly sharp. She's smart. She's sophisticated. She's got everything between the ears. She had never missed a premium payment, did everything exactly the way she was supposed to from the very beginning. And yet this happens to her. Why? Stay with me into segment 2 and I will tell you exactly why these kind of things happen and what exactly you can do about it, even if you can't always prevent it. Stay put. Welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking with me in segment 2 of this week's Everything Medicare Podcast. The reason why this episode is coming to you at 8 o'clock at night, Mountain Time, and not at 10 to noon like it normally does on a Monday, is because my day was spent figuring this thing out. This issue, this problem. This was not something that I can have someone in our office handle for me. Like a lot of things. This was a complicated issue. And like I said, this had absolutely nothing to do with me as her broker. This came directly from Medicare. Me as someone's broker, and any broker for that matter, all that they typically really deal with is things that happen on the insurance company side. The cancellation of this person that I talked about in segment 1 came from Medicare directly. So, point blank, this was nobody's fault except for Medicare. Now, insurance companies in general, and the way our healthcare system is today, there's billing errors, there's mistakes. I mean, things are more complicated than ever, and there's just more and more mistakes more frequently. They happen no matter what. If you're in the healthcare industry long enough, you're bound to run into them, and no matter how well you prepare for them, they still can happen. But this was a big thing. This impacted this lady, or could have impacted her, dramatically. So what ended up happening with her? Well, we found out that her Medicare Parts A and B were reinstated. This will take a couple of weeks at the longest to update in Medicare systems, to which point we have to take the necessary steps to reinstate her plan exactly the way it was, and that's what we will do. But how did I get to the point where we had some kind of solution? This would be an overwhelming problem for a lot of people, especially for someone on Medicare dealing with this on their own. And granted, this has happened before to other people. Someone hit a wrong key, someone hit a wrong button at the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Like I said in segment 1, this did not happen through any result of my client doing anything wrong. She has been perfect, doing everything exactly by the book since she got onto Medicare, and I have done nothing wrong as her broker, as her agent. This was a random coincidence, glitch, an error that had huge consequences. It's important to understand that these kind of things can happen. Now, some people on Medicare will go their entire lives without ever dealing with an issue of this dramaticness. Some people will never deal with it. It's just kind of the luck of the draw, folks. I mean, some problems happen because your representative doesn't quite know what they're doing, or maybe someone, just doesn't understand what they're on and they don't handle it properly. Problems happen with those, not these kind of problems. These kind of problems happen to anyone at any time, regardless of how good their representative is and regardless of how good a job they do with it. Because you can't control what's going on within the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Let's be real with this. I'm not going to say everything, but close to every single department or organization that's controlled by the government is somewhat incompetent. Medicare's no different, folks. Unorganized, incompetent. They get in their own way. And you have to understand this. As complicated as the insurance industry is today, and the healthcare industry, with all the billing, computers, codes, it's just so confusing. It's dramatically complicated to the highest degree when you combine all that everything starts and ends with the government when it comes to Medicare. I don't think any of us can dispute that. Now, granted, instead of this being a 6-month process for this poor lady, it's going to be a week or two process. And that's what I want to talk about today. How can you reduce the pain when you have something hit you out of nowhere that you didn't do anything to cause? It's quite simple, folks. First things first, and it's going to sound cliche, so forgive me, so I'll quickly move off this, but it's true. Working with a good person. If I was not in a situation where I was checking on these things for her, just out of the blue, I wouldn't have noticed it. I wouldn't have done the homework. I basically gave up an entire day's work for this one client of mine because I care about her. I like to think I'm a good representative. But I'm not the only good representative out there. There's a lot of good ones, but a bad one would just never know this even happened, and she'd be left to deal with it on her own. And like I said, if this went a couple weeks without being brought to her attention, it could create problems that probably would be unfixable with everything that I explained. So working with a good person is huge. This is a huge example of why you want to work with a good person. Because they'll catch things like this just like I did. And I'm not trying to pump my own chest and puff myself up. That's not my intention here. I'm not saying this to try to make myself sound great or anything like that. This was emotionally devastating for me today to have to deal with. Emotionally devastating for her. But I don't say any of that to impress you or anything like that, but simply to impress the idea upon you that it matters. It makes a difference, even if you think that you can handle it on your own. Part of fixing this kind of problem was amplified by me having connections, by me knowing who to call, me knowing how to get to the bottom of it, me knowing what to do from that point going forward. It's not something that could get fixed in a day, but it's something that can get fixed in a week or two instead of months and months, maybe even a year. Trust me, I've seen situations like this that can take a year to fix when someone's trying to do it on their own. Because guess what? The only person they can call is customer service, who can't help you. Sorry. They're people in call centers. They don't know what to do. It's just a fact of life. So, what else can you do besides picking the right person? Well, when you do have problems, the key to getting something fixed is two things. Number one, consistency. You want to form a schedule of following up with certain things with certain people that are working on them, whether it be a billing department and a provider's office, let's say a doctor's office, a dentist's office. You follow up with them. You follow up. The number two thing you do is you bug people. You don't be afraid to bug people. Things happen to people that aren't afraid to shake the trees, to rattle cages a little bit. I'm not saying you be aggressive with people. You professionally and diligently bug people and follow up. And don't be afraid to ask more than one person. It's better to have 10 people working on an issue at a time than one. Chances of it getting fixed faster are much better. You want to turn it into a race and see who can get it done quicker. You'll find strength in numbers. So my advice with these types of situations is, for one, for some of you, they're going to happen and they're unavoidable. For others, you might never deal with anything like this, and I hope you don't. But what you can do, what you can control, is working with someone that's good And if you think they're going to be good when you start working with them and you find out they're not, don't be afraid to walk away from them. Because after 3, 4, maybe even 5 years of working with someone, you'll know if they're good or not. Let's be honest. And the second and third thing you can do on your end is follow up with the necessary people and don't be afraid to bug people. Because if you're not bugging them, I guarantee you they're not thinking about it and they'll forget about it. People in the healthcare industry and the insurance companies and also doctor's offices deal with tons of people. They forget about you. Make sure that they don't forget about you. Make sure that they're hearing your voice, hearing your name, seeing your face consistently, and let them know that until this problem is fixed, they're going to continue to hear your voice, hear your name, see your face. Stay with me into segment 3. Welcome back, folks, to our third and final segment of this week's Everything Medicare Podcast. Folks, you have more power than you think. You have a lot more power than you think. And you have the power to check on things, to make calls, to keep checking in with people. I myself am a professional bugger. It's part of my profession. Because in order for me to get things fixed for my clients when they're counting on me, when they're depending on me, I have to bug people to get things done. So that way, instead of something taking 5 months to get resolved, we can get it resolved in a month or two, maybe even a couple of weeks if necessary. And that's really all there is to it. It takes a little bit of hustle to get these kind of things resolved. But they can be resolved. Some situations are really sticky. I'm not saying that everything can be fixed right away, especially in the healthcare industry. It can take some time for processing, but doesn't mean you can't follow up and doesn't mean you can't bug. Because I guarantee you, it helps get things resolved quicker. Folks, I really, really appreciate you listening, and I appreciate your patience with all this. Like I said, this was a very trying and emotional day for me, because this happening to my client, she's one of my favorite people in the world. I just love her to pieces, and I was devastated that this happened to her. They picked the worst person for this to happen to. Let me put it that way. And I was going to be damned if I didn't do everything in my power to be there for her. Because that's my job. That's who I am. And I want to do that for every single person I work with. If you're on Medicare or you're about to get on Medicare and you'd like to possibly work with me or even talk with me about your plan, you can always reach out to me. I work with people that live in Utah, Florida, and Idaho. Those are the 3 states my company's licensed in, although we're always expanding to new states. So stay tuned. I'll announce that as time goes on. But call us. Our office numbers are 801-255-5340, 801-255-5340. We're part of Brindle Insurance Group. And call us Monday through Friday. And I'd be happy to talk with you. I can't promise I can help everybody. You might be in the best situation for you, or you might just be stuck on where you're at, given the circumstances. But if you don't look, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Thank you so much for listening, folks. I hope you have a fantastic week. I hope your Easter was just wonderful and full of blessings. And I will bring you another episode, and I can't wait to talk with you again on Saturday. Thank you.